Hi, my name is Norman Cohen. For 7 years, or probably close to eight, my name was Swami Anand Prageet. I lived in Pune 1, in the ashram in Pune. And then after that, I started a Rajneesh center in the south of France. And the purpose of this in the beginning, this is the fourth shooting that we're doing. And the purpose in the beginning was to kind of create a distinction between Pune 1, Sangam, and the ranch. Personally speaking, for me, I did not want to be associated with the ranch, and I wanted to show that what happened in Pune, what happened in Sangam, was different than what happened at the ranch. A lot different as far as I was concerned. To give you a little background, I was surprised to receive over 1,200 views on that video, and so I decided, well, I may as well do another one. And the thing that stimulated me to do it was that a lot of people who were at the ranch responded to me, and I wanted to respond back to them, which I did in the second one. And then the third one was basically what I got out of it, both good and bad, my experience with Bhagwan, I should say, both good and bad, the 7 or 8 years I was with him. And then I wanted to put it out there, so to speak, that I wanted other people to come forward and speak also. Because I had this vision, I should say I have this vision, that I don't want the wild, wild country to be the last word that people hear about what happened to us, sannyasins. I want to be able to kind of respond to it in our own way. And the way I wanted to respond to it was tell our stories. Like, what happened to us? What happened to me? What happened to you? And I think it's interesting. I know other people's stories, and I think they're interesting. And I think it's worthwhile telling it. My experience, as I said, from being with Bhagwan was, in a sense, great while I was living there. And then afterwards, it was both good and bad. And I think I discussed that already. In fact, this is the second half of the last video I did, basically talking about what happened to me. So I'm going to continue with that in this video. As I said before, it's kind of a two-sided coin. One side is service. Literally, I am service. I talked about that before. I really accept that in my life as being service, and I enjoy serving other people. That's the joy in my life. And then the other side of the coin is free self-expression and emotional freedom and sometimes brutal honesty. And that's what I want to talk about today. So that's what this agenda is today. There's something else I want to deal with too. And I've been in sales for many years. I've written a book on sales, and I know sales pretty well. I'm a good salesman. And I think that it's important to kind of know what the elephants in the room are when you're selling something to somebody or when you're presenting something to somebody, like I'm doing here. And so I assume that some of you are saying, well, what's he doing this for? And truthfully, it's just because I enjoy it. I'm an old guy. My body's pretty much used up. It's, I've overuse, abuse, and misuse. I've had a back operation. I've had a knee operation. I can't do much anymore. I used to be really active, and that's probably what caused all the problems. So this gets my energy moving. I like it. Somebody once said that more people are afraid of public speaking more than they're afraid of death. Well, I enjoyed it because it gets my energy moving. It gets me stimulated. Like this morning, I woke up and I felt good. So I like that energy. So I'm doing it because I like it. It's fun. I enjoy it. It gives me something to do. And the other thing I want to do is, I mean this sincerely, is to kind of put it out there. I want to be the guy that says, okay, here's what happened to me, what happened to you? And I mean that. I want to hear what happened to people. I've said this before. I want this to be a catalyst for other people to come out and tell their stories, however you want to tell it. I've seen people, I know that some ex-sannyasins have written books already, which is great. I can't write worth a shit. I've already proven that with my book. And so I'm doing this because, I talk. I like to talk. The other thing, too, is like another elephant in the room is, is he making money? Is he doing this for the money? No, I'm not. I'm actually paying money to have this done. I'm paying the professional cameraman here is doing a great job, and I'm paying a guy who's coaching me because I don't know anything about social media, and he's helping me put it into social media. So I'm paying it out. If this ever does make money, which I doubt it will, I'm going to take that money and put it into our foundation, which is really set up to help human beings. So it's not going into my pocket. There's nothing I really need right now in my life. I got everything I want or need, and I'm pretty much happy with what I got. So this is not in order to make money. There's no in order to, so to speak. So with that said, let me kind of get into it. As I said before, I've got notes here that I've gone over. They're all mixed up. They're not in order. I just wanted to have some ideas in my head because I want to be able to speak from what I call from invention. I don't want to have a speech to give you. So you can pretty much tell that I'm kind of all over the place sometimes, and that's my intention. So when I let off last time, I was talking about impasse. One of the problems I was having after I get kicked out of the organization, after I kicked out of my center, as I said before, I was basically depressed. I was dysfunctional. I was suicidal, as I explained before. And then I was also in impasse. I want to explain what I mean by impasse because I think it's important. Maybe some of you have experienced, but just don't have the words and terms for it. Impasse comes from Gestalt therapy, which I studied and practiced. Impasse is when the two sides of the brain are in conflict. They basically can't make a decision. And what happens is it causes implosion. It causes the person to go inside, but not in a good way. It causes the person to shut down, so to speak, shut the energy down. And in Gestalt therapy, it's called the sick point, because that's what it's seen. And in Gestalt therapy, the way to get out of it is through explosion, is to break through it, so to speak. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. As I said before, I couldn't get it together when I was in San Francisco, the Bay Area. I was in the houseboat in Sausalito. I couldn't get it together. And then I moved up north, and I moved around. And finally, I went back to Europe. So I ended up in London. So where I'm in London, I'm living in London with a dear friend of mine. And she goes to work every day. And I get up in the morning, and I go up. We lived in Hampstead. So I walk up to the Heath, Hampstead Heath, and I walk the Heath. And the idea is I'm going to decide whether to stay in Europe and get back to work, because I had plenty of connections in Europe other than the Sanyassin community. So I was thinking about staying there and working as a body worker, as a therapist, or going back to where I come from, going back to the United States of America, so to speak. And I figured, well, I'll figure this out. But again, I was in impasse. So one half of my brain is going, well, shall I stay in Europe? And the other half of my brain is like, well, shall I go back to the States? This is typical impasse. So I'm walking up and down the Heath thinking about this. I stopped for lunch. I think there's a great pub there. What is it called? It's a big, beautiful white building. I can picture it. I think, was it Jack Straw? I might be wrong. This is so many years ago. I would stop. I used to love pub lunches when I lived in London, so I'd stop for a pub lunch. I'd have my pint of Guinness, which is my favorite thing to drink, and I'd have something to eat, like a tiramisu salad or something like that. Good stuff. And I'd finish my lunch. I'd go back to walking the Heath again until it got dusk, and I'd go home or go back to the place I was living. Well, this happened day after day after day after day. I'm talking about a long time, and it's kind of getting embarrassing going back to see the woman I'm living with, and she says, well, did you decide? I go, no, but I'll do it tomorrow. And I go back to the Heath, and I'd be walking up and down again in impasse. Now, the question I have, do you relate to that? Is something like that happen to you after you left Pune or left the ranch or left Sangam? Were you lost? So that's what I was talking about, impasse. And the only thing that really broke me through it was a dear friend of mine. And let me kind of tell you what happened. So eventually I decided that I couldn't decide, so I figured I'll just go back to the States. And also I was running out of money by this time. As I told you, I had a stash, but it was running out. This is quite a long time now we're talking about. So I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but in London, when I lived in London, I used to fly back to the States in British Airways. And at that time, I don't know if you can, at that time, you could get up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, go down to the British Airways office and buy a standby ticket that was leaving the next day. But you had to do it like, for some reason, early in the morning. So I got out of bed, took a taxi down, got my ticket on standby. And the plane was leaving in the morning, so I said goodbye to my friend, I left, and I go out to the airport. Well, they kind of know me out there because I've been doing this a lot when I was living in Europe. And so I go up to the woman and she looks at me. She says, you might not get on today. I said, why is that? I said, because there's a large group of Germans that are going back to Wisconsin. And I was flying into Chicago, and maybe most of you know that Wisconsin's right above Chicago, so they're flying into Chicago. I said, okay, I'll just see what happens. So we sit there and wait. I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm watching these people board, okay? There's all these huge German people coming. And they got their lederhosen on. They got the funny little Tyrolean hats, I guess, with the feathers, the dark green. And they got these arms full of groceries and stuff like that. And they're walking on the plane. They're one after the other. There must have been 250 of them just going on this big 747. So finally, at the last minute, she says, okay, you get on. I must have got the last seat. So I get on, and I buckle myself in, and basically, I close my eyes and get ready for takeoff. So I've got my eyes closed, I'm taking off, I'm kind of relaxing into the seat because it's a long flight. The plane reaches altitude and it's kind of cruising, and all of a sudden, the whole plane smells like a delicatessen, okay? These German people had brought all this food out, all this food. And the guy kind of wakes me up, he says, you hungry? I said, sure, I'm hungry, I hadn't had any breakfast. And so they fed me all the way to Chicago. They were the nicest, kindest, most loving people I ever met in my life. And it was like this is what I need. I needed that. I needed that kind of caring for someone who I didn't know. They weren't sannyasins. They weren't, enlightened and all that kind of bullshit. They were just good, honest, decent human beings that shared what they had with me. And they were singing German songs. And they were, when I was in Germany, I used to love Jägermeister. I used to love it. After dinner, I'd drink Jägermeister. They're giving me shots of Jägermeister, and they got the beer out, and they got all these great meats and cheeses. And the whole place smelled great. And so, I land in Chicago, and my friend from Chicago comes out. He says, you hungry? I says, no, I'm not going to eat it for a couple of days. So that was a good thing. It was great. So I saw my friend in Chicago. He takes me back to his place. One of my oldest and dearest friends, he was had been also a sannyasin. And so he goes to work every day, and I hang out with this kid who was like my nephew, and all his buddies. They were like 18 years old, and I hung out with them. And life was good. So I stayed there for a while. He had an old Honda Goldwing motorcycle I used to use, and I found a girlfriend at a bar one night and went out dancing late at night. We'd go to this black and white bar that played reggae music, and I'd dance and get there at 12 o'clock in the morning and dance, and then go out for breakfast. And I was living a good life, Of course, I was running out of money again, and my friend Rick finally said, he says, you might want to think about leaving because, he was with a woman and he wanted to get married, and he kind of wanted me to get out of the house. I didn't want to screw up his relationship. So we're sitting there one night, and this is the breakthrough. It came from a close friend. It came from a brother. I had been, while I was there, still in the impasse mode, I was investigating everywhere in the country where I could go and work, actually in the world. I even checked out a place in Australia so I could be close to my son. So I'm checking all these places where I can go and practice rolfing, basically, because I figured, I can't screw that up. I know how to do it. So I found all these places to go, and I was looking at Vancouver, Canada. I was looking at Australia. I was looking at Long Island, looking at Pennsylvania. But there's this one guy who was in Salt Lake City, Utah, and he was the only rolfer there, in Salt Lake City, Utah. And he was leaving. He was going to medical school. I didn't know anybody in Salt Lake City, Utah. I traveled through there going to Aspen. I used to live in Aspen, so I traveled through there. And the only thing I remember, it was like it had the biggest nativity scene I'd ever seen. And so I called up this lovely woman who operated the alternative newspaper there. It was called the Catalyst Magazine. And she was so sweet to me. Again, she wasn't a sanyassin. She was just a kind-hearted human being. If you're out there, Greta, thank you. And so she basically said, yeah, come, we need somebody here because this guy's leaving and he was the only guy. And she told me about the alternative community there. And of course, the skiing was great. I love to ski. So that was a possibility. So here's what happened. I sit down there with my friend one night. Basically, he tells me it's time to go, which I totally respect because I've been there too long. I overstayed my welcome. And so I go on back and forth. He says, well, I could go here. And because he's a brilliant guy. He's a good businessman. I could go here and go there. He's listening to all this bullshit. So finally he says, hey, man. He says, it doesn't matter what you do. You got to do something. And for some reason, that rang a bell inside my crazy mind. And I go, yeah. And so basically, I didn't have much money, so I bought the least expensive airplane ticket, and I ended up in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's how it all started. So that's really basically how I got out of a long, long time of being dysfunctional. And even when I got to Salt Lake City, I didn't have a great time, that's for sure. But the old saying, desperation breeds genius, and it seemed to work. And after 20 years, I left with quite a bit of money and a great experience. I want to acknowledge all the wonderful people in Salt Lake City who supported me and who supported what I was doing and who were so kind to me and loving. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you all very much. Okay, so let's deal with the free self-expression and emotional freedom and sometimes brutal honesty. I had always, throughout my life, considered free self-expression to be important. I had always kind of balanced. I had this image in my mind. I think I got it from reading, a lot of books when I was younger. I got this image that myself, as a man in this country, I always had to balance the wild animal with the social being. I think that's pretty old-fashioned. That's a pretty old metaphor. If you're too much of a wild animal, you get in trouble. One of my friends once told me, he said, the reason I became a lawyer and a psychologist is so I wouldn't end up in jail or a mental institution. So that's the wild animal side, okay? And then the social being side is important because that's what gets you involved in community. That's what gets you involved in business, in relationship, and all that type of thing. And if a guy is too much of a social being, they kind of become a milquetoast. You see these guys, walking around the mall in the weekends, look like they're just about ready to pass out because they're bored shitless with life, and they've got no energy. You see it all the time. So it's a hard balance. And it's a hard balance for me because, again, I've always loved the idea of free self-expression and emotional freedom. But it really kicked it up a notch, as they say, when I went to Pune. That really did kick it up a notch. Especially when Tirtha asked me to lead groups. And I started leading groups in Pune. Now, I think what we did in Pune through therapy groups was, well, first of all, it was extraordinary because it really was extraordinary. But I thought it was incredible. I thought we did some really good work. Really good work. Work that we couldn't do anywhere else. Literally couldn't do anywhere else. I remember one time, well into it, we're talking about a time when we had thousands of people coming from the West, coming to the ashram. It was crowded. And people would go to take sannyas, and Bhagwan would say, go do some groups, and they'd sign up for groups. Well, these people would end up in my groups, and they came from all over the world. And basically, what I heard, I don't know if Bhagwan said this or somebody said this, but I think Bhagwan said, I'm not sure. I really can't remember. But we were plumbers. We were called plumbers. And the idea was to get the shit out of people. That was our job. The what I call the cathartic group leaders. There were other groups too, but there were a group of us like Tirtha and myself and a bunch of other guys. There were cathartic group leaders. I think Surya was. There were a lot of them. Anyway, so we're a lot of them, and so we're basically working with people's suppression. When they come here, you work with their suppression. And I found out that catharsis worked the best. I found out that if you take the dynamic meditation, which is basically cathartic, and you move that into a group room and you create different processes that are similar to the dynamic meditation, and you have people experiencing their feelings, experiencing their emotions, interacting with each other, it all comes out good. It really does. So anyway, so I think there were, as I remember, as I say, my memory's not that great. I'm an old guy and all that kind of stuff. But there were probably like 35 or so group leaders. And we decided to have a meeting. I don't know how it came about. We decided to have a meeting. I remember this. So we go to this meeting and, I see all the guys I know, all the people I know. And also there are other people too. Amita was leading a group called the Enlightenment Intensive, which I took, which is great. It wasn't cathartic, but it was brilliant. There was I've done a bunch of, and Divya. Okay. So the reason I'm laughing is because, I got to say something about Divya. First of all, Divya and I are exact opposites. We're exact opposites. You couldn't find more opposite people, but I totally love this woman. And I got to tell you, so the reason I go on my Facebook page is to see old friends, and she's there all the time. And she's always got a group of, she leads women's groups. Brilliant. And she's always got these 20 women who are all smiling and she's sitting back there with them. And every time I see her, it just brings a huge smile to my face. And she's got this, I can go to one of her videos where she's talking, and she's great. I wish she'd come to this country and teach these women how to elect a woman president, for Christ's sake. Can you imagine the women in this country? I shouldn't go on a rant here because I'm going to talk about this later when I talk about the next video. But seriously, video, please come here. Anyway, she's wonderful. Divya, if you're out there, I love you, sweetheart. I love you. Come to America, lead groups. Okay, so we have this meeting. And the people in the meeting that were doing the type of groups I was doing, which basically I would say were, cathartic. People were getting their energy out. We hadn't talked very much. We knew each other, was that Amitabh and Tirtha and a bunch of other, I forgot. There are a bunch of guys. So we're talking. Well, it turns out that we all agree on the same thing. We all create different processes. We're all basically doing the same thing, but different ways. And you know what we agree with? We agree that we're dealing with sex and anger. That's what we're dealing with, sex and anger. That's what people bring from Japan, from Europe, from South America, definitely from America. And in America, people say, there's people I know in this country that say they never get angry. They don't get angry. You just don't get angry. It's amazing. Anyway, so that's what we agreed to. That's what we dealt with. Oh, another great story. So before I went to Europe, I was working at Esalen Institute, which is a growth center in Big Sur, California. And there were two women group leaders, who came from Esalen to visit Pune, who wanted to visit Bhagwan and see what's going on. Well, Lakshmi invited them in the office. They talked. And so I came in because I knew them. And Lakshmi just gave them, they said, just go around the ashram, see what we're doing. Everything's open to you. They could go in groups, do whatever they wanted to. So fine. So they kind of walk around, they talk to people, and they're there for, a week, 10 days, something like that. And so at the day they're leaving, and I had seen them around, so, I was trying to make them comfortable. I wanted them to be happy. So at the day they're leaving, they're back in Lakshmi's office, and I come in to say goodbye to them. So the four of us are sitting there talking, and they're really nice people. They're kind of congratulating us on running a great place, and the people were so great, and they had a great time, blah, 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 blah. They did some meditations. They went to lecture. They thought it was all wonderful. And so Lakshmi said to them, well, how does it compare to what you're doing? And so the two women say this. They say, oh, it's exactly the same as we do at Ashram, except for the sex and anger. And I started cracking up, and so did Lakshmi. They didn't know what we were laughing about, because that's all we did. That's all we did. And what came out of it for me, and I think I've talked about this a little before in the previous videos, what that came out for me was that people suppress sex and anger so much in the West. And I truly believe that suppressed anger, if it's suppressed long enough, comes out in violence. Now, I've worked with enough angry men. In fact, you could say I specialize in angry men. I've worked with enough angry men, violent angry men, to know that's, I mean, I can't prove it. Everything I say is anecdotal. I got no research on it. But coming from Prageet, that's what I experienced over and over and over again. If you take two guys that are in a barroom fight, and they want to knife each other, they want to shoot each other, they want to hit each other as hard as they can. If you take those two guys and put them in a group room with me, and let me process them, they can exert their energy without killing each other, they'll end up probably being friends. When I first went to London, before I went to Pune. In fact, I met a lot of people who were going to Pune. That's how I found out about Cohn. I worked at Quasar. That's the place that Tirtha and his wife had worked before they went to I think they ran the center before they went to Pune. It was run by a guy named David Blagden, who turned out to be one of my dearest friends. So he was running it, and I was there for a thing called the May Lectures, and the people that organized the event had set me up to work at Quasar to do Rolfing, and if they wanted me to do it, I could do some groups too. So I go in there figuring I was going to make a certain amount of money per session, and David, who ran the center, wasn't privy to that information. So he wanted to pay me less. I said, no deal. I said, that's what I agreed to with the people who organized this thing. I said, I came all the way over here believing that. I said, you're stuck with me. I said, you need to pay me the money that they promised. Well, we argued back and forth, and it was heated because I could see his point, and he could see my point, but we were polarized. Now you have to understand, David was 6'3", big, strong guy. He was the best sailor I've ever sailed with. He was a magical sailor. In fact, he sailed the single-handed transatlantic race. Brilliant, brilliant sailor. A hell of a nice guy too. And so I had seen this movie called Women in Love. So I got this thing from the movie, okay? So I said to him, and they had they had group rooms in Quasar, which had padded floors, they had pads on the floors. And so I said, I'll tell you what, David. I said, I'm pissed off at you, you're pissed off at me. I said, why don't we go in one of the group rooms, and you and I get our energy out. We wrestle with each other with the idea that we exert our energy, get all our energy out, but we don't hurt each other. What do you think? Well, he's kind of a proper Englishman. He looked at me like I was crazy. So I talked him into it. I told him about the movie I saw. I talked him into it. So he agreed to it. So that's what we did. Now, we fought. We really fought each other, but we made sure we didn't hurt each other. And after we were totally exhausted, the two of us, because we wouldn't let the other guy get the best of us. It was a huge ego trip for both of us. And so we basically were exhausted. And, we walked out, I think we had some rips on our shirts, maybe a little blood somewhere, but we didn't hurt each other. And afterwards we went out and we went to a pub and had a couple of beers together, and we became best friends. I mean, like brothers. I spent the rest of the time when I was in England with him and his wife. So that's what I'm talking about. You can take anger and use it. It's energy. That's all it is energy. In this country, literally, anger is bad. Anger is bad. You know what this is called? It's called a negative emotion. What the fuck, a negative emotion? We're born with anger. When a kid's born, he's angry, especially when they chop off part of his penis. I must have been pissed off. Can you imagine? First you come into this world and some guy chops your penis off, you're going to be pissed off. I'm just kidding, but seriously, anger is natural. A kid poops in his diapers, he gets angry. Kid's hungry, he gets angry. Kid's uncomfortable, he gets angry. If you haven't had kids, you don't know what I'm talking about, but guarantee, I've had kids, I know what I'm talking about. So it's not all just, loving energy. Come on, man. So, and the way anger is treated in this country is cognitively. It's treated cognitively. Say you're having some anger problems. Say, which has happened to me, you're with a woman, you're getting along great, you're in a relationship, and all of a sudden, boom, you get angry, and she goes, whoa, I'm not going to have that. She gets all pissed off. So you figure, well, you go to a psychologist, maybe he'll help you with your anger. So you go to a psychologist. Well, you go to this building, this commercial building, where the psychologist's office is, or a medical building. You go up and see Dr. Putz and Futz, and you walk in there, and he invites you in. You sit down, and he's got a comfortable couch to sit on because he's very humanistic, and he's got this comfortable chair, and he's looking right at you, and so that there's no desk in the way, which is all very humanistic. And you look around, and he's got books everywhere to prove how smart he is. And then he basically says, so what's your problem? I'm really angry. I got all this anger about it. So instead of saying, well, great, let's let it out. Let's go with it. Let's see what it leads to. No. He's going to mind fuck the shit out of it. That's what he's going to do. He's going to take you back to mommy and daddy. He's going to dump your siblings. And what he's going to do, he's going to make it bad and wrong, or he's going to have you play the blaming game, blame somebody else for it, or you end up suppressing it. That's about it. That's about all you got. You got bad and wrong, blaming game, suppression. So let me transition and talk about how it affected me, this free self-expression and emotional release or emotional expression and brutal honesty. For me, the image I had when I came back to this country and I started working in Utah, again, Utah is a very conservative place. There's not a lot of anger shown in Utah. There really isn't. Everybody's pretty cool and calm and collected. And so I did business there. And I had a good business. I had a business that was supported by the community. I ran it with integrity, I ran it with honesty, and I was successful, hugely successful. We had a student clinic where the mayor of Salt Lake City and the governor of the state used to come. I used to hang out with the governor's bodyguard while he was getting a massage. So we had good connections there. So I have this image of this free self-expression and emotional release as this wild beast I'm riding, like the wild animal over there and the social being. So it's this wild beast I'm riding, and I'm hanging on to the reins. Now in business, it's pretty easy. You have to do that in business. Anybody knows that. You're hanging on to the reins. And in business, I never let anger use me. I used anger sometimes. Like when I'm negotiating a deal, sometimes I'll use anger. When I was going through my divorce, and we were in this agreement stage where we're trying to figure out things. So every once in a while, I use my anger to get what I wanted. And when I was negotiating for sale of my schools with the CEO of the other company, every once in a while I just let it out and they go, okay. They usually give you what you want if you use it properly. So I used it, but I didn't let it use me because I got the reins going on. The problem I have is this. Maybe somebody can relate. Being in a relationship with women in this country. I like women. I like to be with women. I enjoy relationships. I'm with a wonderful woman right now. I totally love her. I totally love our relationship. She's my best friend. She's my lover. She's everything. I love her. But it's not so easy for me in a relationship because, I'm sitting there with this woman that I'm loving and she's loving me. And, I feel real kind of comfortable. And the hands started releasing a little bit on those reins, like, oh, she loves me for who I am, not. And so I kind of let go. And all of a sudden, Prageet comes up. And wow, it can kill it. It can kill a relationship. It can hurt a relationship. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to kill the relationship I have with women here. I really don't. I mean, I don't want to offend them. They're not used to me, you know? They're not used to that kind of outrageous shit that I put off sometimes, that I used to benefit other people when I was doing groups in Pune in Europe. But those people signed up for it, or actually Bhagwan sent them to it. They didn't even sign up for it. So that's been a problem for me in the West. It really has. I had a kind of a confrontation with this guy the other day. He's a brilliant guy, very sharp guy, and I kind of got pissed off at him. So I was taking the piss a little bit. He just kind of looked at me like that, didn't say anything. And so I said to him, well, what do you do when you get angry? He says, I don't get angry. The guy said, I don't get angry. He's a grown man in his 50s. He doesn't get angry. But that's what you get here. You get people that actually say, I don't like anger. I don't get angry. It's a negative emotion. It doesn't belong in relationship. It doesn't belong anywhere. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to do another. We're basically done with this idea of Pune and Sangam and the ranch. I think I've got all the juice out of that lemon I can get, okay? And you're probably tired of hearing about it. The next one I'm going to do is really comparing Pune and Sangam to the United States of America. I'm going to have fun with that one. Maybe Divya can come and help me talk to the women. Anyway, I'm going to have fun with that one. And let me give you a preview of coming attractions with that, seriously. Look at the violence in this country. This is the most violent country in the world right now. The most violent country in the world. We have stats to prove it. More people are killed here, more people are maimed here. Oh my God, it's disgusting. Every day you pick up the paper, some poor guy is shot. Children are murdered in school. I mean, come on, you know what I'm talking about. These kids that do that. Give them to me. I'll take them in a group room. Let them get that shit out before they kill somebody. Come on. I mean, it's so frustrating to see this shit happen. It's so frustrating to see this shit happen, Anyway, I'm going to talk about that next time. Here's one that'll get you. Hopefully this will hook into the next. So I'm doing a commercial for the next one. This is kind of like, like they do on television. We had children in Pune. Now a lot of people were, they condemned us for that. They condemned us for allowing our children to run free. The kids really didn't run free. I mean, there was a couple of mothers who got some schoolwork together. They were teaching the kids, but they were really free. The kids were all over the joint. Kids were all over the joint. This one little character. I knew his mom real well. She was a single mom. And he would go around and he would adopt different fathers. One time he adopted me. He started living with me. He plopped on the floor there next to where I was living, and he's lived until he got to the point where he smelled so bad. I told him to clean himself. He went off and lived with somebody else. But that's the way the kids were. They were wild. Now you can say a lot of things against that. Kids should be in school, blah 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 blah, which I'm going to talk about next time. It's going to be good. But I was watching the news after the last school shooting, and this reporter was interviewing this young high school girl, just a young high school girl. And he was asking her some questions. And one of the questions he asked her, I'm not exactly sure what the question exactly was, but it went something like this. Was that a shock to you? Were you shocked to see this man with a gun come in and shoot people above? He's going like that. You know what she said? No, it wasn't a shock. We expect this to happen. We go to school expecting this to happen. Can you imagine the children of this country going to school, having the expectations that might be murdered by some crazy motherfucker with an assault rifle that's defended by the Republican Party who's running the country right now? As President Eisenhower said, beware the military-industrial complex. Anyway, that's what's coming next. That's what we're going to talk. That's what I want to talk about next. Anyway, so let me close. Okay, probably something a little funnier. I think I got something in my notes I wrote down. I was just screwing around. Oh yeah, here it is. So basically, you know, what did I get out of all that? You know, what did I get out of it all? You know? Well, you know, the word spirituality. To me, spirituality is easy. You know, we're all leaves in the tree of humanity. We're all leaves in the same tree of humanity. It's simple. We're all one. You know, there was no discrimination. There was no gender discrimination. There was no sexual preference discrimination. There was no ethnic or color of skin discrimination in Pune 1 or Sangha. We didn't discriminate against people. You know, we were all one. We were all leaves in the tree of humanity. Not in this country. And the other thing is meditation, okay? People talk about meditation all the time. And what I heard Bhagwan say, and kind of what I followed, especially when I ran Sangam, is that the ABCs of meditation is love, life, and laughter. And I put a D on there, which is celebration, which it worked for me. Now, there's these sitting meditations that are quiet sitting meditations. They're kind of tranquilizing to me. I go into like a trance state with them. But I figure I'm going to do that after I die. And that'll be for eternity. It'll be longer than an opera. Unless it's with Jesse Norman, and I'll sit through as long as it wants. Anyway, so it's simple. You sit down, close your eyes, you be aware of your breathing, you be aware of your ass on the floor. You shut the fuck up and you watch your thoughts. That's meditation. That's pretty simple, right? Death is easy. We're all bubbles in the ocean of life. When you die, you pop and become the ocean. That's all shit. Oh God, it's simple stuff, man. Simple stuff. So world according to normie, okay? And then if you're confused about relationships, good luck. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening. It's always the graciousness of the listener. Thank you very much. Much love to you all. Bye-bye.